Well, good morning, children at St Mary's and St Helens. It's coming towards the end of another very, very busy week with everybody back in school. That's the most exciting thing. That obviously you've been watching these assemblies, maybe in the classroom, surrounded by only about 8 or 9 other children. And then lots of you have been watching our online assemblies at home. But this is probably the first one where we're all back in the classroom. And I know, speaking to Mr. Spence and Mrs. Scriven, and Mrs. Lane, I know at St Mary's has been a really good return, and the same at St Helens. It's just been brilliant having all the children back together. And I've been delighted today to be joined by Reverend Ian. How are you, Reverend Ian? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm missing all the kids at St Mary's. I really do miss their lovely, shiny, friendly faces. Can't wait to get back in school to see you all.
That's a really good point, because that's something I've been talking to some prospective parents and new parents at St Helens, that we have to do obviously online meetings like this, and I share about our assemblies and how Reverend David, our St Helens vicar, will come in once every fortnight into the hall with the whole school. But it's those differences that we really miss out, isn't it, where we all come into the hall and share about our value. And as you know, this term, our value is trust. So as normal, I'm going to do a few welcome words that you can join in with, and then we'll hand over to Reverend Ian for the story for today. So as you know, the welcome words really, really well. You can join in St Helens and St Mary's children. We have gathered as a community today to worship together and think about our value of trust. So Reverend Ian, over to you about trust.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chappell. Well, I've got 2 stories for you today, one from the Bible and one from my life a few years ago. I would think I was still very young. I was probably about 22 years old. So I was definitely a man, but only a very young man. And I was walking my dog one day, and I was walking the dog in the countryside. And I like to take my dog for long, long walks. And I like to have a look at all the flowers in the hedge and things like that. And as I was walking along, I saw this amazing plant I had never seen before. It had these 4 kind of spiky leaves, and right in the middle of this spiky leaves was this big black berry. It was lovely. It was absolutely fantastic. And I thought, I wonder what that berry tastes like. It looks delicious. And I reached out my hand to take that berry, beautiful big blackberry. I bet it's sweet and lovely. And I just did that. And suddenly a little memory came into my mind. Now, I can't remember whether it was my mummy or it was my teacher at school, but it was a voice that said, whatever you do, if you go out in the countryside and you don't know what it is, don't eat it. Now, I was a man. I can make my own decisions. Look, it's a lovely, lovely, sweet berry. I'll have that. I'm a man now. But I thought, no, hold on a minute. My little 6-year-old memory said, no, you don't eat things you don't know what they are. And I'm not sure if I quite understood that when I was told it. But I thought, no, I will listen to my teacher or my mummy or whoever it was that said it to me all those years ago. And I got back home, and the dog was worn out, and that was great. And I opened up my little book of wildflowers, and I found that the plant I'd been looking at was something called deadly nightshade. And as you would suggest from the name, if you eat it, you get very, very ill or worse. So I guess there are sometimes people tell you things, maybe even a long time ago, and you just don't quite understand at the time. But it's really important to trust them and to do what they say, because that saved me from, at the very least, a bad tummy. Well, my second story is about a man called Abraham and his wife Sarah, and they lived 4,000 years ago. That's even 2,000 years before Jesus. And they were living in a city called Haran, which we know in a country called Syria today. And he was a rich man. He had lots of sheep and goats and donkeys. And in those days, he even had servants. And he really loved living where he was. And he had good neighbors and he had good friends. It was a lovely life he had. Well, one day, God told Abraham to leave his country, to leave his relatives, leave his family, his father's family anyway, and go all the way to a different land. And God told him in his prayers that he would show Abraham where to go, and that he was going to bless Abraham, and he was going to make him really, really famous. Well, Abraham looked around where he lived, and he liked everything that he saw. He looked at all his sheep and his goats and his donkeys and his servants, and he thought about all his neighbors and his good friends and his father's family. Did he really want to leave his home? Well, he didn't. No. And did he know where he was going? No, he didn't. And would he ever come back to see all his friends again? Well, maybe not. But God had told him to leave and given him a promise to show him where to go, and promised to bless him and promised to make him famous. So I wonder if you were Abraham or Sarah, whether you would have stayed in Haran or whether you would go. What would you do? Just think to yourself, don't say it to anybody. Well, Abraham decided to trust God and obey him. So he said goodbye to all his neighbors. He got together all his sheep and his goats and his donkeys and his servants, and went with his wife Sarah. And he also took one of his other relatives, his nephew Lot, and he left Haran. And he trusted God that God would show him where to go. And he trusted God that he would bless him and make him famous. Well, he traveled all the way to a land called Canaan, and Abraham settled there with his wife Sarah and his sheep and his goats and his donkey and his servants. And he put up his tent, and before long he had new neighbors who became really good friends. And you know what? 4,000 years later, we're still talking about Abraham. God did make him famous. And whether you are a Jewish person or Christian or Muslim, Abraham is very, very important to your faith. So I guess that's two stories there, Mr. Chappell, about trusting and obeying.
Very, very important stories as well, because I totally get what you were saying about the first one, about that little memory in your head of somebody saying, no, you shouldn't be just picking off berries. And I suppose it's the trust that we put in different people, like teachers. And that's something that we always talk about in school, that obviously when you're in class, children, you can sometimes give the right answers to different teachers and sort of different adults when they're with you. But it's actually when you're not got people with you that you actually do the right thing. And that almost links into what we were talking last turn about responsibility and taking responsibility. But you've got to trust what adults tell you in school to try and help and guide you. And that's one of our reflection questions today for you to think about. When you know it's hard to do what's right, who do you put trust in? Who do you listen to? So do you listen to teachers in school, adults in school, your parents at home, or as Reverend Ewan's been talking about, you listening to God? So who do you trust to guide you and make the right decision? So with the person next to you in class, with your class teacher, have that little bit of a reflection now about those people who are important to you, to guide you, and they trust to make the right decisions. Reverend Ian, are you happy to share a prayer with us as we finish our assembly for today?
I'd love to, Mr. Chappell. Thank you very much. I don't know about you, but I like to do my Superman prayers where I put my hands out like that, one, and then fold them, and then that's two, and then three like that. And then I say the prayer, and then you say amen. So let's try that, shall we? 1, 2, 3. Lord God, when we know what the right thing to do is, please help us to do it. When it is hard to do what is right, please help us to trust you. Amen.
Amen. Because sometimes that's a hard thing in school, isn't it, Reverend Ian? That sometimes children may not follow something that's been said to them because they might not know why. They might feel a bit aggrieved sometimes if a teacher's asking you to do something or an adult's asking you to do something, whether it's a playtime event and we're giving you some advice, but we're only giving it as teachers and as adults in school. You've got to trust what we're saying to help you. So we might be moving you away from a situation that may be escalating, and you might not be able to see that. We as older adults and teachers who are experienced might be able to see that actually, if we don't move you away at this particular point, that game of tag might get out of hand, and then we end up with lots of different difficulties that arise. And so sometimes you just got to trust what adults in school are telling you, because we don't do it to be mean or nasty or strict. We do it to help you guys to be able to be amazing, which we know is something that we want you to do at St. Mary's, and to be flying high at St. Helens. Reverend Ian, thank you for your time today. We're going to finish with a song. I know we always have a song, but on to the end of assembly, and we know singing is one of those things that we can do in small groups of 15 facing the front. So we'll leave it to the class teachers to organise that, but that is part of one of the things that we have enjoyed returning back to a little bit of singing. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the week, St. Helens and St. Mary's children, and we look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye then.